All right, we are moving on to making our studs here. So we're going to get our studs going all the way across the wall, and then we'll take out the ones we don't need. So if we go sketch up for schools here, and we go to a little bit of a 3D view, you can see that double top plate. Now remember how the first one I had to make a component? These next two I didn't have to make a component because I just made them copies. The following here, we're going to make a stud, and then we're going to have to make a component for that. So I'm going to click on my rectangle tool, because I need to go 1.5 by 3. And if I take a look at that, I already see 3.5 in there. So I'm going to go 3.5, comma, 1.5, and enter. Now this is kind of the cool part here. I'm going to use the push-pull tool. Click on this surface. It's kind of doing a little bit of surface fighting, but I can get it to go. And I'm going to just touch it to the bottom of here. And if you actually look down there, there's touch it at the bottom of the edge plate. It's 7 foot 7.5 inches. So you can type 7 foot 7.5, or you can just do that touch that I just did. Now I notice I can click on all these separate little parts and pieces. I want to triple click again, right click on it, and hit make component and call it stud. You don't have to put Mr. Han in there, I know I am already. So 7 foot 7 space 1/2 inches and hit OK. I know that joke is good every year at this time. And I have my first stud in place. Okay? Now just like before, we do a little bit of work here to figure this stuff out. Studs are spaced every 16 inches on center, except for that first one. And this is why. We're going to put a sheet of plywood on here. And this sheet of plywood is going to be 4 feet by 8 feet. Enter. And that sheet of plywood covers up there. It goes all the way up. So you can kind of see that sheet of plywood sitting on there. If I do 16 inches on center, so I do this move that we did before, and I go Control, move it right down this edge and go 16, because 16 inches on center would make that 16 inches on edge as well. 16, Control, 16. We end up with that sheet of plywood not landing on the center of this stud. So when we go try to nail it on, it doesn't work. So actually, all of these have to kind of get moved over a little bit. So we want this edge of this plywood to land right on the center of the stud. So we move it over 3/4 of an inch. And then that piece of plywood splits that stud perfectly. Then the next one we can keep going and it'll split it all perfectly again. And that all works out then. So we're going to take that piece of plywood off for a second, and we're going to talk about how far that spacing is on that first one. So that first stud spacing is always 1 foot 3.25 or 15.25. And then you can move your 16s past that. So I kind of got mine started already. Control 16, Control 16, Control 16, and this last one lands out in the middle, so we just move it back to the edge. So we started our layout from this far edge here, got our 16s, and we got them all laid out. And we are completed with the studs.